Hey everyone, my name is Dillon Gonzalez. I'm the editorial director of GeekVibesNation.com and also a co-host of the Home Dance Film Festival podcast. And welcome to a brand new episode of No Streaming Required, your weekly deep dive into all the latest and greatest in the world of physical media. Welcome back. We have another exciting episode for you this week. Tons of our favorite labels, including Shout Studios, Def Crocodile, Eureka, Sony. So many titles to dig into that I'm very excited about this week. But the first of which I want to talk about is our saviors at Sony. It is the 4K Ultra HD Steelbook release of Fury. Okay, this is the David Ayer movie from 2014, I believe, starring Brad Pitt, John Bernthal, Shia LaBeouf, Michael Pena. So some people who have fallen out of favor, but still a really solid ensemble here in terms of the performances. And this film, it has been on 4K previously. I believe the first 4K release came out in 2017, 2018. That's one of the dates I didn't write down, but it has been released on 4K before, so I will tell you the reason for that re-release here in just a second. But it is, first I'll get into just a little bit of the plot. If you want more details on any of the titles I'm going to be talking about this week, you can typically find a written review on geekvibesnation.com. So if you need any more details on anything, make sure to go there. I'm trying to get a broad overview. And this is a war movie set during World War II, and this one kind of differentiates itself by being kind of focused on a tank battalion. So it's a lot of tank warfare, and just you get to know a lot of these soldiers that are going around in this tank, trying to help win the war and getting to know them and getting into battles and scrapes and stuff. Being a David Ayer movie, there's not a ton of subtext like that a lot of war movies can get a little bit more deeper thematically beyond just like the perils and hardships of war. There's a little bit of like camaraderie amongst soldiers and stuff, like with kind of an audience surrogate with a new character that is introduced to the battalion who has to kind of get used to the whole rigmarole of the like being in a tank and tank warfare, because he's kind of a desk jockey who's kind of got thrust into this position. In terms of David Ayer movies, he's not my favorite filmmaker. He's made a lot of things that really just don't really click with me, but Fury is by far, for me, his best movie, probably because a lot of the dialogue that he kind of rubs me the wrong way in some of his more modern movies aren't in effect here because it is a period piece. And so really great action scenes too, some really, really awesome tank battles. And all the performers are doing a really nice job. It's not an overly complex movie, but it's a very entertaining movie, and I like it quite a bit. This was actually my first time watching it on 4K, and I had a really fun time with this one. Why this 4K? Why are we getting this now? The previous 4K, as I mentioned, it was only in HDR10, and those who have been watching my show for any amount of time knows that Sony has, in recent years especially, been re-releasing a lot of their early 4K discs that did not have Dolby Vision with Dolby Vision. So that is the big difference here, is that you get a Dolby Vision upgrade for this one. And I did not have the previous Fury 4K release, so I cannot make direct comparisons to how that compares if you already own the original 4K version. All I can say is I do really like the way this looks. It looks really nice in the 4K scan in Dolby Vision. Some really nice black levels that are typically solid and detailed, with a little bit slightly raised blacks in some of the transition points, but overall it's a really consistent transfer. Highlights are kind of tame in that they're not blown out, but they're brilliant when they need to, even though it's not an overly bright movie. It's a lot of like overcast. It's bright when it needs to be, especially when there's like tank fire and everything. Some of like the colors and the HDR and stuff really enhance some of the tracer bullets that are light up the sky. In terms of fine detail, it's a lot of really nice 4K detail in terms of like all the grime that are on these soldiers' faces and everything. Everything looks really nice in Dolby Vision. So is it an improvement from the previous 4K? Typically it is whenever I've compared Dolby Vision to HDR10, but it's probably not a night and day difference. It's where at this level, or more so just degrees of improvement. So if you're generally happy with your previous release and you're not someone who is like an eagle-eyed viewer that sees these differences between HDR sources, this might not be an essential purchase for you, but if you're getting this for the first time, definitely get the Dolby Vision because it'll be the best version on the market. It does have a Dolby Atmos track that was seen that is on the original 4K release, and it sounds fantastic. It's a war movie, so you have really bombastic audio, and it sounds really great here. So audiovisual wise, I see no issues with this one. It's a really nice release from Sony, which is typical for them. They do a really good job. You also get a 5.1 track if you don't want the Atmos track. And in terms of special features, several featurettes and deleted scenes, some special features on the 4K disc that are not on the original Blu-ray disc released by Sony back in like 2015. A good number of special features here that I will be detailing more so in my written review, but as it stands now, if you like the SteelBook itself aesthetically, that's a reason to upgrade, but the Dolby Vision is the technically the reason you would be wanting to upgrade this. So Fury on 4K, newly released by Sony. I think it is worth it if you're a fan of the movie. It's a really nice release from them. Going from a title that would get your adrenaline pumping to something a little bit more lackadaisical in a very positive way, we're going to Music Box Films' release of Eephus. This is a fantastic new movie that just debuted at festivals last year, and it came to theaters this year, and it's really just my type of movie through and through. It takes place in a single day in a small community, and it just involves the last baseball game at a community baseball field before a school is going to be built on this land, and it's just seeing a game over the course of this day with these players, and through this you get to know all these little selection of different people in this game from different age group and backgrounds and stuff, and temperaments and everything, and how this game brings people together and how people respond through this kind of community building exercise in which people who may not otherwise speak to one another come together through this sport, and you get to know them, and it does my soul very good to watch this type of movie. It's methodically paced. Don't expect like a typical baseball movie where you're seeing tons of like fast-paced plays and everything. A lot of these people aren't even in that great of shape. It is kind of like a community ordeal. But just seeing these people kind of talk with one another and kind of get to know one another even better, and just seeing their dynamics, that's the kind of thing I love. I love a great character-driven piece, and this really works super well in that regard. So if you kind of like a more like indie experience where it's like more talky and kind of like character building, this is the movie you want to watch because it really gives you that, and it's such just a rewarding movie in my opinion, and it is one of the best I've seen from this year so far, and I highly recommend it. On Blu-ray, it looks really nice. This was an independent production, but the production value is great, and it looks really nice on Blu-ray in terms of having fine detail and bold colors. Everything sounds really good. Like, as I mentioned, it's not an overly bombastic soundtrack, but everything within the environmental sounds, like the crack of the bat and little insect sounds and everything, all of that sounds really nice and delineated, and I think you'll be very pleased. And they've really done a nice job with the special features, and you have stuff like 2 different commentary tracks for this one, behind the scenes featurettes, deleted scenes, interviews, a Q&A, really packed with special features. And I think if you like just kind of like a nice character-based, rewarding, heartfelt movie, Eephus is the little movie that you should have on your radar, because I think it'll do you very well. For those who are looking for a great movie, Eephus is a good time from Music Box Films. Highly recommended from me. Now, I jokingly started out by saying Sony was our savior, physical media, but who may actually be our savior is our good friends, one of my favorite labels, over at Deaf Crocodile, and their newest release of The Tragedy of Man. And I joke that they're our savior just because they are the ones finding the weird bits of cinema from around the world that other people probably otherwise would not touch, I would not know about otherwise. And just every time they announce something, I'm just so blown away by what they've discovered. And this is kind of the card that comes underneath it, and it's able to be tucked very neatly into this, which I love about how they can just they factor it in that way. This in particular is another example of them finding international animation that is incredible and not easy to find otherwise. This comes from the filmmaker behind another movie that I have reviewed many years ago on Geek Vibes Nation, The Son of the White Mare. And this is a movie decades in the making from this director that details from the earliest days of humanity through the end, like past civilizations rising and falling and eventually meeting its demise. So you are following these characters who are being guided through distinct chapters throughout the periods of time, from like ancient Egypt to like the Renaissance and throughout human history, and just kind of seeing how mankind has typically ruined whatever era they've been in through just their humanity and just like their typical foibles. It's a really interesting journey in terms of the animation styles kind of switch up from chapter to chapter, and just seeing thematically what the director is exploring through this epic journey. And it is an epic journey. It's damn near 3 hours long. It's about 2 hours and 45 minutes. But it is paced in such a way that you never really feel the oppression of that runtime. You don't get many animated films that are that long, but it really guides you along very well. And with this being in kind of like almost an episodic form with these chapters, you kind of, if you're not really feeling one era, you're not too long before you're going to get to another like time in history that maybe will jive with your sensibilities a little bit longer. Not that I think any of these chapters are particularly weak, but there's something interesting in each chapter that maybe if one just happens to strike you wrong, the next one will probably hook you back in, because this is a really, really interesting film. And I really like what this filmmaker, Marcel Jankovics, is offering up. I refrain from saying his name just because I did not want to butcher it like I just did, but he is a very talented filmmaker, and this is a very impressive project that he was working on for a long, long time. And with such a undertaking, I'm glad someone like Deaf Crocodile is here to make sure it is finally presented to the world how it should be. And in that case, it is a HD master from this kind of 23-year span that ranges from like filmic elements to digital files, and just how there's special disclaimers at the beginning of this that talks about how Deaf Crocodile and the distributor, the original owners of the film, they wanted to maintain the integrity of how this was supposed to look. So instead of making everything homogeneous and making everything kind of like smoothing things over to make everything look the same, they made all the elements look like they were supposed to whenever they were finished. So all the filmic elements are nice and grainy and all that stuff. And some of the digital chapters, they may be a little bit smoother, and they might not look like film, but it's part of the animation technique that he was using. So everything like that was kept authentic. So while it kind of varies from chapter to chapter how this looks, Everything looks as authentic to the original vision as it's supposed to, and I respect that about Deaf Crocodile. And accordingly, they gave some great special features as well, including a commentary track, 2 different interviews, and a visual essay. This is a very, very impressive release that, like I said, it took more than 20 years to finish, but you can now own it in one very impressive package from Deaf Crocodile. This is the deluxe edition. If you don't want to pay the extra dollars for a nice booklet and a nice hard case, you can just get the standard version, which would just be this case right here, this Canova case, and no booklet. But the booklet really adds a lot, and I like this case and how everything looks uniform on my shelf. But if you don't factor in aesthetics to your purchase, or if you don't read the booklets, maybe save a few dollars and get the standard edition. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's your money. Either way, Deaf Crocodile done some great work with this one. They always do. I always appreciate what they do on their releases. And The Tragedy of Man on Blu-ray, it looks fantastic. It sounds good. I really can't find a fault with this at all. Very, very good work from Deaf Crocodile, so make sure to pick it up if you have been enjoying what Deaf Crocodile has been putting out, which you should because they're amazing. I think you'll like this one. Sticking in the world of more adult animated fare, going back to, I believe, 1988, Studio Ghibli's release of Grave of the Fireflies, newly released by G-Kids and Shout Studios. So this is the infamous film that I've heard about so much over the years of my lifetime, and I'd yet to get to it. Mostly I'd heard that it is devastatingly sad, and that's pretty much all that I knew about it. And it is a very tough movie to watch, and it is a very sad movie. I think it's very good. I appreciate a lot of what this film is doing. I was not as personally like bawling as a lot of audiences seem to be, mostly because I was a little bit frustrated with some character choices here in terms of pride getting in the way of safety. But those are nitpicks into what is overall a very devastating, heart-wrenching story about 2 kids who are trying to survive in World War II era Japan, in a time where rations are scarce. They've recently lost their mom, their dad is at war, and there's not a lot of people around to help them, and there's kind of them trying to survive on their own. And it is a devastating watch. And it's very impressive in an animated perspective. It's beautiful animation. The score is great. It's a really well-rounded movie and everything, with just I probably have a few more nitpicks than a lot of people, but I do understand that this, people consider it a classic, and it is a pretty terrific animated film from Studio Ghibli. So I previously had this on Blu-ray and had not gotten around to watch it. I just did not find a good time to get in that kind of headspace previously, but with this new G-Kids release, I can compare it to what I had previously, which is this Sentai release, which just on cover art alone, I like this a little bit better, just because it's more saturated. But this Sentai release, on a video standpoint, I did not notice a kind of like a night and day difference between anything on like audio, like video wise, in terms of like, I don't think this is like new 4K master or anything like that. This seems to be pretty similar in terms of what I sampled for I didn't like watch the whole movie over, but from what I sampled, it looks pretty similar. Maybe a little bit better compression for the new G-Kids release, and maybe small things here and there. What I was most impressed by in terms of the visual experience, watching this with the original Japanese audio, is I much prefer how the new G-Kids release looks in terms of how the subtitles are styled. It's a really nice kind of reserved white subtitle, traditional white subtitle. These have kind of like big garish yellow subtitles that take up quite a bit of the real estate on the bottom of the screen. And I noticed just on a few phrases that I remembered between the movies that I kind of liked the translation of the subtitles for this G Kids release a little bit better than this one. It seemed a little bit more specific and kind of, I don't know, it seemed to flow a little bit better on the G Kids subtitles compared to this Sentai. But that's just based on very, very like short burst of checking between the experiences. I also think these both have the same audio tracks. There's the original Japanese and there's 2 English audio tracks. One is from 1998 and one is from 2012. From what I've sampled, it seems like maybe the fidelity was a little bit firmer on this G Kids release. So maybe a slight upgrade in the audio on these. And also another benefit for the G Kids is it adds a couple of interviews on this one, including a 12 to 15 minute interview with the director of the film, and then another similarly length interview with film critic Roger Ebert from his Ebert and Roper days, whenever he was talking about the film, which is not on this Sentai release. But the shared special features include a feature-length animatic comparison, like storyboard comparison, and some deleted unfinished deleted scenes, some promos and stuff. But there are a couple of interviews on here, like I said, to enrich the package. So this will be the one that I choose to keep moving forward. Just the subtitle style difference alone, I think, is a big win, and all the other benefits that I mentioned, I think I have to give it to G Kids for how they treated this one. I would have preferred this got a 4K release if we were going to get a new release, but this was out of print previously, so they are bringing this back into print now that they have the rights. So I'm glad that it is at least in print. There's also a SteelBook version if you're a SteelBook fan and you want to choose that version. I obviously have the slipcover version, but overall I think this is a nice improvement. Even if you have the old disc, I think there are some benefits to having this one, but I am just glad it is on now available again in circulation. And if we get a 4K release in the future, I will upgrade it. But for now, this is a really nice presentation for this one. I think most people will be pleased how it looks overall. So it looks pretty solid, sounds good, and some nice special features. So this is one of the standout anime premiere titles that is probably most known. Like I said, maybe infamously for just for how sad it is, but it does deserve a place on any anime fan's shelves, just for kind of what it represents within the medium. So Grave of the Fireflies, make sure to check it out if you're an anime fan. But since we were just talking about something so devastating, I wanted to pull us out of that feeling a little bit and go over something a little bit more lighthearted to Shout Studios 4K upgrade. Seth MacFarlane's Ted. This is Seth MacFarlane from Family Guy voicing a teddy bear that has come to life based on a childhood wish, and these two have been friends since childhood. His adult companion is played by Mark Wahlberg, and it's just basically how their friendship kind of tests the human's relationship with his girlfriend, played by Mila Kunis. And there's some other subplots and stuff, but that's kind of like the main thing. This is actually my first time watching this movie. I know I'm behind the curve, but I thought it was pretty funny at points. There were things I laughed at. There's a lot of stuff that has not aged well, even like a little over a decade ago. But it is kind of tasteless in certain regards with certain jokes, especially the unrated cut that is included. But I did find it amusing enough to enjoy it, and I would definitely check out the second one whenever it comes to 4K, hopefully in the near future. But based on, I enjoyed the TV series, which I've talked about on the show before. But the film itself, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. It's funny. It's just not one of my favorite comedies of the 2010s. But it's amusing, and I do typically like Family Guy and everything, so I'm used to kind of Seth's humor. And there's some deep cut kind of film history references, which I always appreciate with the Seth MacFarlane project, because I know he's a theater lover, film lover from way back. But I originally had the Universal Blu-ray, which I did pull out for this one because this new 4K is from a 4K presentation of the digital intermediate in Dolby Vision. And I think it looks really nice overall. My one concern while watching this is that it might have had a little bit of an unnatural yellow push. Whenever I was looking at this, kind of like a yellow tint that I did not quite find quite aesthetically pleasing at all times. But I did switch over to the Blu-ray disc that's included, and then I also switched over to the Blu-ray disc from Universal from like 2012 or so. That original Universal Blu-ray also had a little bit of a yellow push as well. So I think it is kind of inherent to how this looked originally. Maybe slightly more like warmer in this regard, but it's not something that's like not it's not out of nowhere for this presentation. I think it's just shot in a way that I do not find the most aesthetically pleasing, but it looks like it's kind of how it's supposed to look. And I think the Dolby Vision treats this very well, and it represents the source as authentically as it should. And then you have the DTS 5.1 and 2.0 audio as options. And then with the detail, I think there's some nice upgrades in the detail department as well, and some compression stuff that's cleaned up with the 4K. So not a night and day upgrade because we are coming from a digital intermediate, but there are some meaningful upgrades in certain aspects that I think if you're a big fan of Ted, that the 4K is the way to go. And you also get some additional special features. So you get two new interviews like with the producer and writers, but you also get the legacy features like a making of and some featurettes and a commentary track and stuff. So pretty well-rounded package for Ted. And I look forward to watching Ted 2, hopefully when it comes to 4K. But if you're a fan of Ted, the 4K from Shout Studios, it does a nice job. Also from Shout Studios, and also kind of lighthearted, is a release from, I believe, 2023 that they put out of the 1990 film Flashback with Kiefer Sutherland and Dennis Hopper. So this is kind of an unlikely road movie in which Kiefer Sutherland is playing an FBI agent who is transporting a prisoner played by Dennis Hopper across the country to kind of face his punishment. And along the way, he kind of escapes and gets involved in like another kind of scheme, like nefarious plot with a small town sheriff who's not on the up and up necessarily. And there's all kinds of stuff going on. And they kind of like go from kind of like enemies to kind of having a bond whenever they are doing their thing. So it's like a kind of a buddy comedy, but with people on opposite side of the law coming together, and it's hilarity ensues. Not the most hilarious movie, but as kind of like a mindless showcase for like actors that I like pretty well, playing off of one another and kind of working within a studio framework where this type of movie used to be more prevalent. It's perfectly solid entertainment. I'd probably give it like a 6 out of 10 if I had to. It's like entertaining enough kind of like to just spend a weekend afternoon watching, but it's not reinventing the wheel on its source. It's kind of like Dennis Hopper kind of like riffing on his like legacy from Easy Rider and stuff. They even name check Easy Rider within this movie. And they just kind of have fun with that. Harmless movie. I've definitely seen worse from this era in terms of throwaway movies. If you're a Carol Kane fan, she has a small role in this, which she kind of almost steals the movie away. I love Carol Kane, so it's definitely fun to see her. But overall, solid movie, not amazing. In terms of this Blu-ray, also solid, not amazing. It seems to be from an older master. You definitely see some wear to it, some small nicks here and there, a little bit of softness to the detail, maybe a little bit of digital smoothing, but not like an egregious amount. Definitely one that could use a fresh 4K remaster, even if it's just a Blu-ray upgrade to this one. But it's not a terrible disc by any like stretch. It's an older master. So this is one that Paramount just kind of delivered, and you just kind of take what you get. If you can find it kind of on a cheaper side, I think it is worth having. But if you're paying close to like $30 or anything like that, maybe wait till you can get a little bit cheaper, because it's not been remastered or anything, and there's no special features. You do get the original audio, 5.1 and 2.0 audio. That sounds good. Flashback, if you kind of like an unlikely duo comedy, Flashback, it'll do the trick probably. Heading over to the good people at Fun City Editions, we have a new Blu-ray release of Breaking Glass, starring Hazel O'Connor, the real-life musician, who is in this movie playing a musician who... it's kind of like the rise to fame of kind of like an underground kind of like... new wave, proto-punk kind of sound, mostly new wave in my opinion, sound, and just kind of her rise and gathering up a band to support her with this new manager and their kind of dynamic and relationship. There's the reversible cover art, and how once she starts getting some fame, how of course, like, the record labels try to change her and like finesse things and drive a wedge between band members and stuff. Like, I know that's kind of a standard musician like narrative, like all the tropes and stuff, but they do put some kind of twists on it that I found like artistically, and that I found rewarding and interesting. And I do really like the music that they were creating as well. And I like the spirit of this movie. Overall, I think it's a really interesting discovery, and it's one that wasn't on my radar previously, but I quite enjoyed it. This was previously released on Blu-ray by Olive Films, I believe, from an older master. This is from a new 4K master, the uncut UK version of the film. It's been restored from archival film elements. Not having the previous release, I can, from screen caps I've seen of that one, this does look to be a pretty significant improvement. Them working from the elements that they had. They are not all perfect, and there are a few scenes where you can kind of see that there was some lingering wear and tear to the elements, so it's not a pristine transfer, but it's pretty close. And I think that Fun City Editions have done a really nice job of cleaning this up and making this look really nice and filmic. You got all the natural film grain, and everything looks pretty nice, like nice color saturation. Everything looks really, really good. There's just a few moments here and there where you can be like, okay, there's some film damage here that they couldn't quite ameliorate, but overall it looks very, very good. In terms of the special features, you get a commentary track, you get an interview, you get a video essay, you get the alternate ending, and different alternate scenes from the US cut. I'm glad to have the original longer UK cut on this one, but seeing some of the differences with the US cut is also interesting. And with all the on-disc features, the booklet, everything, Fun City Editions has put a nice package together for Breaking Glass, and I did quite enjoy the movies. So if you like a kind of a film that's centered around musicians, which Fun City Editions will mark their first 4K release in the coming months with, ladies and gentlemen, the Fabulous Stains. If you like something like that, it's perfectly in the same wavelength as Breaking Glass. So make sure, if you like this, have that on your radar, or if you know you like Fabulous Stains, give Breaking Glass a chance, because this is a really nice Blu-ray, as always, from Fun City Editions. Great addition to your collection. My next couple of releases are from Radiance Films, the first of which is, I'm going to butcher this because it is French, Rosa La Rose, Fili Publique, which is like public girl. Rosa the Rose, public girl. So this is, I will take out the OBI strip here and show you the full make sure there's no inappropriate imagery when the full artistic work. This is about a kind of a cadre of sex workers on the streets of France, and Rosa, our lady here, is the most desired of these workers, and you have all kinds of people coming to her and like seeking her out every day, but this is kind of like some of her co-workers and stuff. But this is not done in kind of a bleak way. It's kind of like a lighthearted version of sex work in a way at first, in which you kind of have like this kind of like I said, found family of co-workers who they like look out for one another, and they kind of seem to like have a decent time with what they do and chatting with one another while they're waiting for people to come and pick them up. And their boss at first doesn't seems to like care for them and take care of them and not be too harsh in terms of like, he's not a violent person at first, and until Rosa, who is the most profitable girl around, begins to think she might be starting to fall in love, and how that will, like, what if she may want to leave the life behind in order to pursue this love. And where this eventually like evolves to, it gets a little bit more intense as things goes along, but the beginning, it's like has a very kind of like fantastical feeling to things, in terms of like there's like kind of small like dance sequences with like at a birthday party that kind of feels like very theatrical and fun and lively, and it really kind of like lulls you into this lifestyle. And you see Rosa meeting with all these clients, but like she's not getting into like harm or anything. Everything is just kind of like in a really good register that I was it really kind of lulled me in. And then as things progress, things get a little bit more intense, and I especially hated the ending. I won't spoil it, but there are choices that are made that I personally could not understand. But overall, I did really like this movie up until we got near the end. I would still recommend it. I think it's an interesting movie, but I just was very pissed off by the end. But I'm glad that Radiance introduced it to my life, because it's one that, like I said, I would not have had it on my radar without these boutique labels, but I found it to be very interesting overall. And I'm always like to expand my French cinema horizons. This comes from a 2K restoration approved by the director. That looks very, very nice. Great bold colors, no nicks and scratches. Everything looks very, very good. You get the original French audio, which sounds great. You get 3 interviews, one of which seems to be new, 2 seems to be archival. You get an introduction. Overall, just a really nice release for Rosa La Rose, Public Girl. So make sure to check out Radiance if it sounds interesting to you at all. And we also have from Toru Morikawa, The Beast to Die. This is a pretty interesting Japanese movie about a photographer who has spent time in war zones. Here's the OBI strip here. Spent time in war zones and has come back and is kind of struggling with his mental health. And he has kind of gotten into some criminal activities and roped in other kind of struggling minds into his web, in which he is eventually going to rob a bank. So he's kind of setting up someone to help him rob a bank. And how this eventually plays out, it's technically a bank robbery film, but it's more than that. It's more so a kind of a study of a fractured mind who's kind of under the pressure of this lingering trauma, and how that kind of plays out in terms of his impact, his negative impact on society, and everyone around him. And it's very dark, meditative, kind of acerbic at times. It's all over the place, but in a very controlled way. I found it to be tonally dexterous, but interesting and engaging, and I did quite like it. Near the end, I kind of started to wane a little bit, but overall, I think it kind of like stuck the landing. But overall, I think it's just maybe a little bit too long, but it's a good movie. And this is a really good release on Blu-ray. It comes from a new 4K restoration from Katakawa, and it looks great. No nicks or scratches. Deep black levels, which there's a lot of moments that take place at night or in darker tunnels and stuff, and none of those really seem to succumb to black crush. And it's just overall just a beautiful looking transfer. You have an interview and a critical appreciation piece on this one. Really nice release from Radiance Films for The Beast to Die. It's a really interesting pickup, and both Radiance Films are definitely worth your time this month. Heading over to Eureka for a little bit of Hong Kong cinema, we have Jimmy Wong Yu and Lo Wei's The Tattooed Dragon. This is was coming out in the aftermath of Bruce Lee's passing, and they were trying to find a martial art talent that could kind of fill that void. And Jimmy Wong Yu never really ascended to that level. But this is a very solid movie in which he plays a kind of a virtuous man who is always trying to protect the underdog. He comes into a new community and finds himself helping some of the people there face off against some gangster types. And one of the ways he does that is through his kind of almost superhuman-esque ability to help them win at some gambling that's happening, and because this gangster crew is trying to basically take everyone's land away from the community. Any Hong Kong film that has a very high stakes gambling scene, I always appreciate. It's a lot of fun, and there's some good action around this out as well. It's not the most action packed movie from the Hong Kong cinema that I talk about pretty consistently, but there is some good action. And this is a nice release from Eureka. You do get a 2K restoration. It looks fantastic. No lingering scratches. Everything looks pretty nice and natural. I really like how this looks. This does have both the original Mandarin and an English dub. Mandarin sounds better and it looks good, or sounds good. 2 commentary tracks and an interview for this one. Overall, Eureka keeps doing Hong Kong cinema well. So The Tattooed Dragon is another good addition for their offerings. Going over to a couple of films from Film Masters, the first of which I'll talk about is kind of a biopic of the Fabulous Dorseys, in which the Dorseys are playing themselves. So you have Jimmy and Tommy Dorsey playing versions of themselves. And whenever you have artists playing themselves, you can kind of expect it not to be the best because it's going to be more of a sanitized version. You have a burn disc for this and the next release. So if your player doesn't handle burn disc very well, stay away from this. But you have these artists, band leaders, musicians, big band, jazz people who it's like kind of the rise to fame from nothing for the Dorseys, and like kind of the contention that happens as each of the brothers gain some amount of fame, and how they kind of like part from one another and then reunite and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty standard storytelling, but it's worth a passive watch, but it's far from the best like golden age movie I've seen. And I think if there some other actors got in this, maybe they would have been a little bit more better, but they are authentic whenever they are doing their musical moments. And then you do have some notable like figures, like band leaders like Paul Whiteman and pianist Art Tatum that show up that are playing themselves and stuff. So if those names mean anything to you, you can probably check this out and you'll enjoy the Fabulous Dorseys. Otherwise, it's more of a forgettable fare, so maybe find a way to watch it without buying. But yeah, it's fine, but it's not worth like going the extra mile to try to pick this up. This next one I like a little bit more. Still more on the forgettable side, but worth it more. We have the film noir A Life at Stake, which has Angela Lansbury as a femme fatale, which, talking about Murder, She Wrote recently, it's fun that I've seen a couple of Angela Lansbury movies whenever she was younger earlier, and just such a stark contrast from Jessica Fletcher. But if you want to see a scintillating Angela Lansbury, check this one out, as she kind of like brings a man into her web. She's a married woman, but he kind of is drawn in to maybe do a deal with her husband, but things get a little bit more complicated, and there may be some murder afoot, and she has a sister who kind of gets involved as well. There's all kinds of tangled webs and stuff within this. It's a film noir, and she is a femme fatale, so you take it from there. It's pretty entertaining overall. It's not reinventing the noir genre, but if you just like the genre and you like Angela Lansbury or Keith Andes, maybe worth checking out. Like I said, it's a burn disc, so if your player doesn't work well burn discs, stay away. But this has been remastered, and it looks pretty good overall. Not many lingering scratches or anything. Filmic, everything looks pretty nice. And the same can go for the Fabulous Dorseys. It was remastered as well. Neither of them have any special features or anything. They just have the original DTS 2.0 audio and remastered elements. So the remaster looks nice, but I wish it would have been a press disc and maybe a couple of special features. But as an Angela Lansbury fan, I am glad to own this one. So Life at Stake, maybe worth checking out if it sounds interesting to you in the slightest. Heading over to our friends at Shudder, we have a 4K upgrade of a title I talked about last October or so, and it is the 4K SteelBook release of In a Violent Nature. This is one that I've talked about already, so here's just a removable backing. So I talked about the narrative of this one, and like I said, back in October, it is just kind of a point of view look at a serial killer, but so like looking at him stalking victims and stuff from his point of view, and not kind of deviating from that to get to know any of the characters. It is just following the arch killer from kill to kill. This is very hard to see in person. It's probably even harder to see on video, but there's a little bit of artwork underneath. Some people find this movie a little bit maddening in terms of its pacing and like just following this entity killer from kill to kill, but I find it very engaging. You kind of get wrapped up in the slow dread of him kind of like coming up upon a future victim, and the kills are very gnarly and everything. But overall, I do like this movie, so I was interested to see that it was getting a new 4K release after that nice Blu-ray release previously, which was a really great Blu-ray release in terms of you had the film on Blu-ray, the Blu-ray disc, and it's packed with special features. You even had an extra disc of special features. There was so many that were included. So they did a nice job the first time, but this is now on 4K, and as I showed off, you do have two discs. So what they did here, there is still a Blu-ray version of the movie. You have the first disc of the previous Blu-ray release back here. That is this. And instead of porting over the second Blu-ray disc, you have the special features from that disc on this 4K disc. So all the production diaries and alternate versions of the movie and stuff that were filmed and abandoned, those are now on the 4K disc. So you're not losing anything, and you still get a Blu-ray version of this movie. It's not just the 4K disc and the second disc of the Blu-ray previously. In terms of a video upgrade, it is similar to When Evil Lurks recently came out on 4K. This is an SDR release. So it is no HDR. You just get the movie in 4K, in native 4K, as a 4K release, so you get a small bump in texture, not monumental, especially with how this is shot, and maybe a little bit better compression, so things look a little bit more consistent. But if you already have the previous Blu-ray, maybe not worth owning on 4K, or at least this version. But if you haven't gotten it yet, the 4K release does look very nice. It's just not going to like blow you away in 4K. One thing to note, as I mentioned with When Evil Lurks, I mentioned it recently, shortly after I talked about that release, Second Sight announced their own release of When Evil Lurks, and they have done a new Dolby Vision grade, in addition to getting a lot more special features and stuff. So if you're wanting to import, When Evil Lurks is out on with a fancy edition with Dolby Vision and stuff. So it stands to reason that In a Violent Nature could get that same deluxe treatment with Dolby Vision and stuff overseas. So if you care about HDR, maybe wait. If not, this is a nice release overall and packed with special features. So that's my spiel. It's a good movie if you're a horror fan, and if you've seen it and you liked it, it's a good release. Otherwise, maybe stream on Shudder if you're more of a casual horror fan, because it might be a little bit too slow for you. But overall, I think it's a really good movie, and I do like this 4K Steelbook, and the 4K release looks good. But that's not my only Shudder release. We have a new entry from earlier this year. We have The Rule of Jenny Penn with John Lithgow and Jeffrey Rush, who people may know best as Barbossa from the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, but he is an acclaimed actor, like in Quills and all kinds of stuff. So The Rule of Jenny Penn, it looks supremely creepy here, and it is a horror movie, but it's not a horror movie in the traditional sense, I would say. It is more so like, I found it more horrific than a lot of horror movies that I watch, just because it made me think about my mortality and getting old. Because what you have here is Jeffrey Rush plays a man who's a judge who at the beginning of the movie suffers a stroke, and he's an older man, and he is put into like an assisted living home. When he gets there, he meets a man played by John Lithgow, who basically is terrorizing everyone like at night and like kind of behind the nurse's back, and they think that this man is just kind of like harmless and everything, and they just like kind of brush off whatever anyone is saying because they think that people are out of their minds, or most of the residents are just scared of him and just won't speak up. So you have like John Lithgow every night sneaking into this man's room and just like messing with him, like pouring like his urine on him to make it look like he peed the bed, like slyly like kicking his knee, and like just like different things like throughout the day and night, just really messing with him and his roommate who's too afraid to speak up. And it's just like whether or not he is ever going to be stopped from his reign of terror in this like assisted living home. So it is a horror movie because you do have like some very like tense moments, but I think a lot of people I won't be scared in the traditional sense. It's just kind of like the dread of not being believed whenever you're at your most vulnerable. That kind of starts seeping into your head. It seeps into my head of just like, what if I was in this situation of not being believed, not being tortured? I don't know. It's just, it really messes with you. So in that way, this is a horror film. It is like the most horror film, but horror fiends who like gore and everything, you might not like this, but I found it very unsettling. So view at your own risk. It looks really nice on Blu-ray, solid black levels, nice textures, everything like that. Everything looks pretty nice. You get a making of featurette that's not too long, but it has some interesting interviews and stuff, and it sounds good as well. So overall, The Rule of Jenny Penn, disturbing to me, and if you have an existential dread of getting old or dying, it might be disturbing to you as well. But moving over to Sony, with the dread theme. We have an older film from Blake Edwards, a thriller called Experiment in Terror. It's a rare Blake Edwards film that's not more on the comedic side. He has done other movies like this, like The Carrie Treatment from the Warner Archive, which I've written a review for before. This has Glenn Ford and Lee Remick. It continues my burgeoning love of Lee Remick. I think she's pretty wonderful, and she does a nice job in here. Playing a woman who at the beginning of the film is approached from behind at night at her home by kind of a man shrouded in darkness, and is like, he knows everything about her, threatens her sister, in order to helping him with robbing a bank. And if she contacts the cops, he will hurt her or her sister. And she does eventually get hooked up with the cops, so it's kind of like a cat and mouse game between, like, she doesn't know who is kind of pulling the strings behind her. If this man is like all seeing, all powerful, and is going to hurt them. And there's just like all different these kinds of scenarios that he's kind of messing with her, and she's fearing for her life and her sister's life. And it's done very well. There's like one maddening thing to me that I hated on a character level, that one of the characters does, but otherwise it's a pretty taut thriller, and it works very, very well. And I think even though Blake Edwards is more so known for comedy, like the Pink Panther films, he does a nice job with Experiment in Terror, and all the performers do a nice job, including Glenn Ford as like the detective that's helping her out. So overall, I did like this one quite a bit, even with a few maddening choices. It was previously released by Twilight Time, which is a now defunct label, so that's out of print, and now Sony is re-releasing it. It looks really good on Blu-ray. I had no complaints. Nice deep black levels, no lingering scratches or anything. Everything looked to be nicely restored at some point. I'm not sure if this is a fresh master because I did not have that previous disc. You get a 5.1 and 2.0 track. I would recommend the 2.0 track. That seems to be the original, but both of those sound good. You only get a trailer, no other special features, but I'm glad this is back in print because I probably wouldn't have seen it otherwise. But it's a really good movie, and worth picking it up from Sony. We got a 4K upgrade from Sony, new to 4K, unlike Fury. This is the 40th anniversary of St. Elmo's Fire. So this has the Brat Pack. So you have people like Rob Lowe, Demi Moore, Emilio Estevez, Ali Sheedy, Judd Nelson, Mara Winningham, Andrew McCarthy, all in a Joel Schumacher film. This was a pretty big deal back in the 80s. And it's like post-college kids growing up, dealing with their different like romantic pursuits and career pursuits and all this kind of stuff. I had seen it before and I didn't really remember it. So watching it again, I was struck by how insufferable most of the characters are, in my opinion. Like, and just how there's very few people to root for, in my opinion. Like Emilio Estevez's character gets like obsessed with this doctor, who he kind of like starts stalking pretty aggressively in a very uncomfortable way. Rob Lowe's a supreme fuck up who's like cheating on his wife constantly and like messing around with like some of his friends' feelings that like he knows is like in love with him. Judd Nelson's character, he's cheating on his girlfriend, who's Ali Sheedy, and by the end of the movie, I was really only rooting for like two of the people. Mara Winningham and Ali Sheedy were pretty much the only characters I was rooting for actively by the end. And despite all that, I find myself enjoying this on a certain level. I don't know, just like the whole Brat Pack like aura of everything. Like I enjoyed watching it, but almost like on a hate watch it type tip where I'm like, these characters, they are driving me crazy, but I kept watching and I wanted to keep watching just to see what they were going to get into. So it's like I enjoyed myself, but I was also very frustrated. So this movie occupies a weird spot in my head where like I like it and I don't like it, but overall I do like it. And this 40th anniversary release, it's newly remastered from the original camera negative in Dolby Vision. It looks very nice, a nice texture to this. Nice bold colors. Everything looks very nice. Whenever there's like some snowbound scenes in some of the movie, the whites are not overblown or anything. The highlights and everything. And I don't know, everything looks really nice. You get a couple of different audio tracks, including a new Atmos track, a 5.1 track, and the original 2.0 track. The Atmos track is pretty tasteful in terms of expanding the soundscape. It's not overly aggressive, but there's a lot of music in this, and it really fills the room. It's nice. But I'm glad the original 2.0 soundtrack is there to make everything, for the original audio experience as an option. That's something that Sony typically does, and I always love that for them, because that's not always a given with other labels, but Sony, they usually do a good job. In terms of special features, you get a commentary track, some featurettes, and some deleted scenes. Overall, another good one from Sony. I always love their 4K releases, and this they do a nice job. Couple more 4K releases. Heading to 2 from Warner Brothers. First up, we have the brand new film, box office hit, a Minecraft movie from Warner Brothers, from director Jared Hess, and from the hit video game phenomenon Minecraft. This was a movie that basically became a meme in theaters of people losing their minds and all kinds of stuff. I did not see this in theaters. This is my first time watching it at home. And I've never played Minecraft. I knew it involved blocks. That's basically my limit of my knowledge as to what Minecraft is. So I didn't have the highest expectations, and I was a little bit irritated from some of the like online stuff with like people wrecking theaters and stuff. I thought it was pretty ridiculous, as because you shouldn't just destroy the sacred temple of the movies. I think you should like have fun, but don't destroy things and don't hurt animals, like release live chickens and stuff. Stupid. But I set that aside while watching the movie because I like to give everything a fair shot, and I surprisingly liked this at first for the most part. So the first 30 minutes or so of this movie, I was laughing quite a bit, and I was surprised by how much I was laughing. It was very silly. I especially liked Jason Momoa's character. He was very funny, and Jack Black, he was pretty amusing as well. Everything, like, had a very zany, hyperactive sense of humor that I was digging pretty well. Once everyone got into the world of Minecraft, that whole world, and digging into the plot, what of it there is, of just like searching for a way like to beat this bad pig character and then like get out of the world and all kinds of stuff. That kind of started to wear out its welcome a little bit by the end for me. It's not the longest movie. It's only an hour and 41 minutes. But its energy just kind of like lagged a little bit in the middle. And especially with all of the stuff outside of the world with Jennifer Coolidge, while having a few good moments, it really just kind of distracted from the overall kind of narrative of the movie and slowed things down. So I didn't hate the movie. I admit I laughed quite a bit at a few of the jokes, but it doesn't have a great sense of pacing, even with its hyperactive energy. I think it just needed a little bit more refining in order to make it a better movie, in my opinion, but it's still entertaining, and I understand why the younger audience loves this, and they, like people who love Minecraft, probably get a lot more of the references and jokes and stuff. That's great. And I'm from an outsider's perspective, there is some value to this movie. It's not completely a soulless movie. It's funny. It's far from a perfect movie, but it's definitely watchable. And this 4K release in Dolby Vision looks very nice. It's a brand new movie, bold, colorful, textures, everything looks good. Dolby Vision, fantastic. Atmos track, sounds great. Big movie, looks good, sounds good. You really, no complaints. You get 5 featurettes that go into this movie a little bit more. But yeah, it's a perfectly solid release for a movie that if you're a fan, you're a big fan of it. Otherwise, go into it with an open mind, but it's not a great movie, but it has some funny moments. But finally, going to what is regarded as a classic, an action classic, the 4K debut from Warner Brothers of Lethal Weapon, Mel Gibson and Danny Glover. the holiday season classic from director Richard Donner. So this is the first of the Lethal Weapon movies to be released on 4K. You get the theatrical and director's cut. This fits pretty highly in kind of the pantheon of buddy cop movies. So like Mel Gibson as the troubled cop, who has to be partnered up with Danny Glover, who is kind of the veteran who's trying to keep everything on the tracks and trying to figure out what his Murtaugh or Riggs's deal is and everything, and like if he is actually going insane or there's like something else going on, and all within kind of this framework of them trying to solve a case that keeps adding layers and stuff to it. It's typical buddy cop stuff, but it does it quite well, and some good action set pieces, great banter between the leads, some emotional moments, and it's set at Christmas time. So all this together makes this a really fun time. And I'm glad this finally got the 4K upgrade. As I mentioned, this does have both the theatrical and director's cut in 4K in HDR10. No Dolby Vision for this one, unfortunately. Overall, the restoration seems to look really nice. It seems to have some of the hallmarks, such as like Dirty Harry, where Warner Brothers, where there may be some light processing here and there, but there is some film grain that has been retained. Maybe not as like 100% natural as we may want it, but overall, it's a really nice restoration, tasteful HDR10, nice black levels, no blown highlights. You get a new Dolby Atmos track, which doesn't sound the best. I think they've included some new special effects in terms of like some of the gun sounds and everything, but they do include the original DTS 2.0 on the theatrical cut. So that's definitely the way to listen to that one. For the theatrical cut, for the director's cut, there's only the Atmos track, because there's not technically an original soundtrack, like theatrical soundtrack, because it was never in a theatrical movie. For that cut, having the old 5.1 probably would have been better, like an alternate version, but that was not included. But overall, looks good, and theatrical version sounds good. Like the original soundtrack sounds good. You get 2 featurettes that are new, and the previous special features are not included, unfortunately. There was a commentary previously that was not included, presumably because Richard Donner has stated that if the director's cut, which is not actually a director's cut, is kind of forced upon him, is included, he didn't want his commentary track included, so they kind of honored his wishes. And then the other special features, I don't know why they weren't included, but it's a rare miss for Warner Brothers in terms of porting over their special features. I wish they'd be a little bit more consistent with this one, but the new brief supplements are interesting. But overall, if you're a fan of Lethal Weapon, this is a nice 4K upgrade. It's not a perfect upgrade, but overall it's really nice, and I'm all for getting the rest of the remaining 3 films on 4K ASAP, because I'm definitely looking to do a binge watch of those with my wife and make it happen, Warner Brothers. So Lethal Weapon on 4K, really nice release from Warner Brothers. And that is my show. I hope you have found something that you are interested in checking out. If so, let me know in the comments. I would love to know what you might be picking up, adding to your wish list, telling your family already that you want it for the holidays, anything like that. I love to hear it, or let me know what you want me to talk about in the future on a future episode. Happy to include anything you may want to know a little bit more about in a future episode. Share this with anyone that loves physical media as much as you do. I love sharing the gift of physical media. I do this every week, so make sure you're subscribed and like and everything. It does help a lot. I appreciate those who come back every week. I enjoy doing this for you. I will be back again next week, but until that time, enjoy these movies.